This is class number 4 on the apocalypse archetype. Material tonight is chapter 6 and 7. I've got 6 items I want to talk about. Keep some sort of order in the great sea of imagery that's inundating us. The first item is the symbolism of the number 7. You'll remember from last time that there was a little book translated as a scroll with 7 seals on it, and these seals are now to be opened one by one. We've been hit with the image of 7 again and again, and the time has finally come when I want to talk about it at some length. In fact, one could say that the whole book of Revelation is a bombardment with the archetype of 7. They go on and on and on endlessly. We've already encountered 7 lamps before the throne of God, 7 stars in the hand of the apocalyptic Christ, 7 angels, 7 churches, and we're now dealing with 7 seals on the scroll, and very shortly, in fact, we've already heard about the lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyes, and very shortly we'll learn that the 7th seal of this series of 7 leads then into 7 trumpets. You see, it's being shouted. If you pay attention to the imagery that's presented, the number 7 is being shouted at us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I think it's very hard for the modern mind to appreciate the way the ancients thought of numbers. Jung tells us that numbers are archetypes, and as one makes some connection with the unconscious, you can begin to sense the numinosity that accompanies numbers, especially certain ones. But the origin of numbers was not as remote to the ancients as it is to us, so that they had more of a sense of their numinosity, and what we now call the qualitative aspect of numbers as opposed to the quantitative aspect. That's almost been totally lost, the sense of a qualitative aspect of numbers. One of the best encomiums on the number 7 that I'm familiar with is Philo's. You may remember in the Greek philosophy course, we talked about Philo, and even used one of his texts. We used Glatzer's essential Philo text. That text translated the essay I have in mind on the creation, but it edited out this extensive excursus on the number 7. See, that's characteristic of the modern mind. It considered it irrelevant because it's so picturesque and bizarre to the modern mind to pay homage to a number. But that's an indication of the awareness of the qualitative aspect of numbers. Philo is writing an essay on the creation of the world, and it's a commentary on the account in Genesis. And he's talking about the 6 days of creation, followed by the 7th day of rest. And then that gets him into talking about the number 7. So he says, now when the whole world had been brought to completion, in accordance with the properties of 6, a perfect number, Father invested with dignity the 7th day which comes next, extolling it and pronouncing it holy, for it's the festival not of a single city or country, but of the universe, and it alone strictly deserves to be called public. as belonging to all people and the birthday of the world. I doubt whether anyone could adequately celebrate the properties of the number 7, for they are beyond all words. Yet the fact that it is more wondrous than all that is said about it is no reason for maintaining silence regarding it. So he then proceeds to talk about it for about 20 pages or so. Here it says, number 7 exhibits yet another beauty. He's been talking about its various beauties that I can't go into. A most sacred object for our mind to ponder. Being made up as it is of 3 and 4, it is a presentation of all that is naturally steadfast and upright in the universe. The right-angled triangle, starting point of figures of a definite shape, that is made up of certain numbers, namely 3, 4, and 5. I hope you remember that from geometry. That's the Pythagorean theorem, 3, 4, and 5. Constituent parts of 7, producing the right angle. Now, the right-angled triangle is the starting point of figures of a definite kind, and the essential factor in this triangle, namely the right angle, is supplied by the numbers which constitute 7, so that 7 would reasonably be regarded as the fountainhead of every figure and every definite shape. So august is the dignity inherent by the nature of the number 7. It is unique and is distinguished from all of the numbers within the decade, within the series of 10. 7 alone neither begets nor is begotten. Now, what he means by that very simply is that 7 is a prime number. It has no factor. So it's not begotten, and it doesn't beget because within the series of 10, there isn't room for it to beget. You have to go beyond the series of 10. But you see the way the ancient mind is still in touch with the living symbolism that can think of numbers as being begotten or begetting. I have to slip that in, even though it's only marginally relevant to the book of Revelation, as part of the symbolism of 7, because we must ask ourselves, what does it mean to be assaulted by the number 7? See, just to cover a few of the items that 7 comes up in. As mentioned, there were 7 days of creation. There's 7 days of the week, and that comes from the seven planets, as understood in the Ptolemaic system. They're thought to be 7 stages of life. You remember Shakespeare's passage on that, but that goes all the way back to Solon in ancient Greek. 7 wonders of the world, 7 deadly sins, 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. And it goes on. But the most important reference, I think, for understanding the number 7 is the 7 planets of antiquity, which were thought of as a planetary ladder. And the ascending soul had to ascend the 7 steps of this planetary ladder in order to reach the 8th step, which is the sphere of the fixed stars, and which would be the eternal realm. Some of you may remember in Psychology and Alchemy, a couple of dreams come up in the dream series that he talks about involving the number 7. In one dream, the father calls out anxiously, "That is the 7th." And the question is brought up, why should he be anxious about it? But that, of course, fits apocalypse imagery very well, to be anxious about being assaulted by the number 7. The connection with the planetary ladder, together with the alchemical parallels, the 7 basic metals of alchemy were associated to the 7 planets. Plus initiation symbolism from all over indicates that one of the basic symbolic meanings of the number 7 is that it's a number referring to the process of transformation, movement through a series of stages as part of an initiation process, so that it's an image of development. In Proverbs, for instance, in the 24th chapter, you read, "A just man falleth 7 times and rises up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief." That illustrates the same point, that it's a transformational image. And as Philo pointed out, one of its features is that it's the sum of 3 and 4. Now, I've discussed the symbolism 3 and 4 in one of the chapters in Ego and Archetype, and there I consider symbolism of number 3 very often to refer to egohood, because it refers to processes in time and space which go through a 3-fold sequence: past, present, future, beginning, middle, and end. Whereas 4 is the number of wholeness beyond space and time, which are the categories of consciousness, and it thus tends to represent static eternity. And the same considerations that apply between the number 3 and the number 4, Jung points out, can also be applied to the number 7 and the number 8. 7 is next to the final image of the totality of 8. But 7, like 3, is a sequence of stages in a life process. Now, to oversimplify it a bit, but just in hopes that it will stick in your mind, I would suggest that 3 refers to a process of a complete ego-based operation that has the possibility of leading on to the experience of the self from the standpoint of the ego. And I would think of 7 then as referring to a process of a self-based dynamic sequence leading to an experience of the self from the standpoint of the self. That's a rough and kind of a thumbnail sketch, but if it strikes you as something to hold on to, then it might be useful, because as I've indicated earlier, the basic theme of the whole apocalyptic process is the coming of the self into conscious realization, and that characteristically brings a good bit of anxiety with it, and the voice that says anxiously that the 7th is on its way would then be quite understandable. It's understood that the number 7 is process whereby the self comes into realization through its own terms. One other thing I'll mention about the number 7, I put a sketch of it on the blackboard, is something that Jung discusses in Mysterium Conjunctionis, beginning with paragraph 8. It's a text that speaks of the hidden magical septenary and carries with it a diagram such as the one on the board that Jung equates to the diagram Jung equates to the fountain in the Rosarium pictures. It's a sevenfold entity, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the net result of it, taken as a whole, then is a complete mandala. Let's turn on now to the next item. Starting in chapter 6, we read, "Then I saw the Lamb break one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 animals shout in a voice like thunder, 'Come.' Immediately a white horse appeared, and the rider on it was holding a bow. He was given the victor's crown, and he went away to go from victory to victory. A second seal was broken. Another horse comes, bright red, and its rider was told, 'Take away peace from the world and set people killing each other.' He was given a huge sword. The third seal was broken. A black horse appears, the rider holding a pair of scales, and we hear a voice saying, 'A ration of corn for a day's wages and 3 rations of barley for a day's wages.' The fourth seal is broken. Another horse appears, deathly pale, according to this translation, and its rider was called Plague, and Hades followed at his heels." Now look what's happening. I've just been talking about an assault by the septenary, and out of this 7-sealed septenary volume, it's just given birth to an assault by the quaternity, a quaternity of 4 horsemen. There's a parallel to this passage in Zechariah, the 6th chapter of Zechariah. Zechariah's vision. "I saw 4 chariots coming out between 2 mountains. First chariot had red horses, second chariot had black horses, the third chariot had white horses, and the fourth chariot had piebald horses." And they were identified as the 4 winds of heaven. And they were going to patrol the world. One of the things we have here is a color sequence that we know from alchemy. The characteristic alchemical sequence is black, white, red, nigredo, albedo, rubedo. Sometimes there was a 4th one that was the citrinitas, the yellowing, or the gold color. But typically it was threefold. And you'll notice in both of these texts, the Revelation text and the Zechariah text, 3 of the colors are straightforward, and the 4th is ambiguous. The Revelation text does not follow the alchemical sequence. If we assume the alchemical sequence to be the natural order, then the sequence in Revelation reverses the red and the black. That would refer to the generally negative appraisal that all things red were receiving at about this time in religious history. But my point here is that in the sequence in Revelation, you've got 3 straightforward colors and then a pale one. Now that word is actually chloros, it actually means green. It's the same word as chlorophyll in our word chlorophyll, but it also had the usage of cadaver-like color, and that's how the paleness got into it. But the other one, the other sequence in Zechariah, again at 3 straightforward colors, and then they spotted forth. That corresponds to the axiom of Maria, the problem of the 3 plus 1 that Jung has made us so familiar with, and that we now understand to refer to the 3 functions plus the 4th, which is so very troublesome. The 3 plus 1 issue also comes up in another way when one considers the nature of these 4 horsemen who are going to wreak havoc on the world. See, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th horsemen are clearly of the same nature. They're all dispensing various kinds of calamity. Number 2, people are going to be killing each other. Number 3, famine. Number 4, plague. But number 1 is not clearly a calamity. It's a white horse, and the associations to a white horse are usually quite positive. In fact, we will come to a later image in the book of Revelation itself where the apocalyptic Christ is riding a white horse. And it's very interesting to observe what the various commentators through the ages have done with this material, because it's been around for so long that countless psyches have had a chance to reflect on it and bring their own fantasies to it. And that gives very, very interesting and significant auxiliary material when one's considering what this imagery means psychologically. There are 3 main opinions as to what this first horse on the white rider, what the first rider on the white horse means. Some have decided that the figure in the white horse is the same as the figure described later as Christ in Revelation 19. So it's the apocalyptic Christ itself joining these other plagues. That's one view. The second view is that the horseman is an imitation of the apocalyptic Christ and is therefore Antichrist. He's riding the white horse to deceive people. The third major view is that he's just another avenging angel like the others, and that he represents some kind of war or domination. And then you've got other views like Quistel's, who has a preterist viewpoint. You remember what that is? That refers to recent historical events that have just happened. According to him, all these horsemen refer to the Parthians who are waiting on the border to attack the Roman Empire. But you see, in any event, my basic point is the same, that here again you have 3 horses that have clearly the same function, and a 4th one who's ambiguous, that people can have a lot of disagreement about. The 3 plus 1 issue is here again. And if you're alert to it, you find it in patient material all the time. All right, my next item, starting on verse 9. When he broke the 5th seal, I saw underneath the altar the souls of all the people who had been killed on account of the word of God for witnessing it. They shouted aloud, "Holy Master, how much longer will you wait before you pass sentence and take vengeance for our death on the inhabitants of the earth?" Each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to be patient a little longer until the roll was complete and their fellow servants and brothers had been killed just as they had been. And when you stop to think about this is a kind of a rather amazing response. Wait a little longer until the roll's been finished. the program hasn't been quite carried out. You have to kill a few more people. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that God is subservient to a predetermined program? There is a very similar passage in the apocryphal Jewish apocalypse that's usually called Fourth Ezra. It's sometimes called Second Esdras. But in the fourth chapter of that work, we're told that God has weighed the age. I should precede it by saying that God is asked by the what's called the chambered souls, those that are waiting for salvation, the dead souls, how much longer? They're getting impatient, just as the souls in Revelation were getting impatient. And the response was, God has weighed the age in the balance, and with measure he has measured the times, and by number has numbered the seasons. Neither will he move nor stir things till the measure appointed be fulfilled. In other words, there's a pre-existent pattern that's already present, and that God seems to be obliged to follow. That corresponds to a remark that Jung makes in answer to Job. He's talking about the fact that Yahweh was considering the possibility of incarnating. But then Jung said he had to find a pattern. What pattern would he use to incarnate? Because Jung then goes on to say, nothing can happen without a pre-existent pattern. That was a very revealing remark when I first came across it, because it told me to what an extent Jung considers the archetypes, the ancient pre-existent patterns of the psyche, to be determinant, you see. God himself can only operate through the patterns that are already laid down, and that seems to be an implication, if you reflect on it, of this particular passage. Have to wait until the role is complete. The program is already laid out. The pattern requires certain more things to be done, so we've got to have some more killings. This passage brings up the whole question of vengeance. Vengeance, the motive of revenge in the souls of those waiting under the altar, and the whole question of vengeance in the divine mind. That's the very idea that Homer brings up on the first page of the Iliad. Can the divine mind entertain such vengeance as was being expressed towards certain heroes in the Iliad? Well, there isn't any doubt that Yahweh is an avenging God. And I bring this all up to reflect on the psychology of vengeance, of revenge, because it's a psychology that's so rampant in the world today. Terrorist organizations of all kinds, and the cycles of revenge that go on and on, call out desperately for a psychological understanding of what's going on. And the issue comes up right here. Let me just give you a few quotes concerning Yahweh and that quality. Deuteronomy 32. I raise my hand, Yahweh speaking, I raise my hand to speak to heaven, and I say, as surely as I live forever, when I have whetted my flashing sword, I shall enforce justice. I shall return vengeance to my foes. I shall take vengeance on my foes. I shall make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword will feed on flesh, the blood of the wounded and the prisoners, the disheveled heads of the enemy. Deuteronomy, that's Deuteronomy 32. Jeremiah 46. For this is the day of Yahweh, the day of the Lord, the Yahweh Sabaoth, the day of vengeance, when he takes revenge on his foes. The sword will devour until gorged, until drunk with their blood. The Lord Yahweh Sabaoth is holding a sacrificial feast in the land of the north, in the river Euphrates. Nahum, chapter 1. Yahweh is a jealous and vengeful God. Yahweh takes vengeance. He is rich in wrath. Yahweh takes vengeance on his foes. He stores up fury for his enemies. Yahweh is slow to anger, but great in power. Never lets evil go unpunished. In storm and whirlwind, he takes his way. The clouds are the dust stirred up by his feet. The mountains tremble before him. The earth collapses before him. His fury, who can withstand it? Who can endure his burning wrath? His anger pours out like fire, and the rocks break apart before him. I think that's enough to make the point. Now you see what we're dealing with here. As I said at the beginning, the book of Revelation is largely Jewish. It's just got a superficial Christian overlay, because this is a far cry from the doctrine of Christ in the Gospels, you see. The first advent of Christ was meant to transform Yahweh. But the second advent, which is what the book of Revelation is about, clearly brings back the untransformed God image. Let me remind you of what Jung says on this matter in answer to Job, in paragraph 708. He's talking about the opening of the seals. We haven't gotten to the sixth seal yet. We're just on the fifth seal. But he says the sixth seal brings a cosmic catastrophe, and everything hides from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come. We no longer recognize the meek Lamb who lets himself be led unresistingly to the slaughter. There's only the aggressive and irascible ram whose rage can at last be vented. In all this, I see less a metaphysical mystery than the outburst of long pent-up negative feelings, such as can frequently be observed in people who strive for perfection. So he then goes on to say that this imagery has something to do with the personal psychology of John. But go on to paragraph 730, a few pages farther, and he expands. Let us be psychologically correct, however. It's not the conscious mind that thinks up these fantasies. They come to him in a violent revelation. They fall upon him involuntarily with an unexpected vehemence. I've seen many compensating dreams of believing Christians who deceive themselves about their real psychic constitution and imagined they were in a different condition from what they were in reality. But I've seen nothing that even remotely resembles the brutal impact with which the opposites collide in John's vision. The purpose of the apocalyptic vision is not to tell John, an ordinary human being, how much shadow he hides beneath his luminous nature, but to open the seer's eye to the immensity of God. For he who loves God will know God. We can say that just because John loved God and did his best to love his fellows, also this gnosis, this knowledge of God, struck him, like Job. The point being, then, that Christianity, as it is consciously assimilated, constructs a layer. I want to say veneer because I want to inject a dubious aspect to it. A veneered layer onto the individual psyche in which the primordial Yahwistic libido has undergone a certain amount of transformation through education and experience and the application of certain symbolic images consciously applied. However, break that veneer, scratch below it, and the primordial psyche is just as it's described in these passages that I've gone through. Vengeance or revenge is a very prominent dynamism in the operation of the unconscious, deriving from the untransformed self. It's a grave problem for humanity, and it's not to be glossed over by ineffectual preaching on Christian humility. Rather, as Jung says somewhere, they put that quotation onto that card that has Jung's painting of Jung on it. It's not through holding up images of light that is effective, but rather being conscious of the darkness. That's what has the transformative effect. It doesn't banish the darkness, but it means it's being mediated by consciousness that knows what its true nature is. And what we're looking at here in the quotations I read and in the text of the Revelation, we're looking at the facts of the objective psyche. They're not metaphysical facts; they're psychic facts, and it doesn't really do any good to fuss about them if they shouldn't be that way. That's the way they are, and everyone that goes deep enough within himself will discover them right there, because they're part of the collective psyche, and we're all grounded in that same foundation. Okay, item number 4, Revelation 6:12. In my vision, when he broke the 6th seal, there was a violent earthquake, and the sun went as black as coarse sackcloth. The moon turned red as blood all over, and the stars of the sky fell on the earth like figs dropping from a fig tree when a high wind shakes it. The sky disappeared like a scroll rolling up. All the mountains and islands were shaken from their places. Then all the earthly rulers, governors, commanders, rich people, and men of influence, whole populations, slaves and citizens, took to the mountains to hide in caves among the rocks. Said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us away from the one who sits on the throne, from the anger of the Lamb. For the great day of his anger has come, and who can survive it? Now, I don't have time to go into every aspect of this symbolism, obviously, so I have to pick and choose. Let me pay particular attention to the image of stars falling from heaven. See, this is an image of the upper or spiritual aspect of the collective unconscious erupting into consciousness. The stars would signify archetypal entities that fall down to earth. They fall into the ego in effect. So what we have is an invasion of consciousness by the collective unconscious. This is one of the features of the coming of the self. Some of you may remember a very impressive dream that I record in The Creation of Consciousness, page 28. I may bring it up in more detail later, but at the beginning of that dream, the dreamer is standing on the Palisades on the opposite side of the Hudson River from Manhattan, and he's watching Manhattan being invaded by outer space aliens who were great giants. Great balls of fire were descending onto Manhattan as the spaceships, and then the giants were exiting from them. See, that's a variation of the same theme of stars falling from heaven. There's another dream that I quote in Anatomy of the Psyche on page 90, in which a woman described a piece of moon falling down to earth into her apartment. I won't go into that any further, but it's an example of how this basic image can express itself in the process of an analysis. And of course, the image is a very common one in the phenomenology of psychosis. When the collective unconscious bursts wide open and inundates the ego with transpersonal images that the ego can't handle. As we're going to see when we proceed, that this invasion by the unconscious happens from two directions simultaneously. There's an invasion from above and there's an invasion from below. And both sets of images are directly applicable to what come up when the unconscious starts to open up. My next item comes from chapter 7, starting with, I'll read verses 1 to 8. Next, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the world back to keep them from blowing over the land or the sea or in the trees. Then I saw another angel rising where the sun rises, carrying the seal of the living God. He called in a powerful voice to the 4 angels whose duty was to devastate land and sea. Wait before you do any damage on land or at sea or to the trees until we have put the seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Then I heard how many were sealed, 144,000 out of all the tribes of Israel. And then it's enumerated that there are 12,000 out of each tribe, making a total of 144,000 who were to be sealed. Now, this has quite a close parallel to the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. Jerusalem is about to be attacked by divine vengeance. 6 men advanced from the upper north gate, each holding a deadly weapon. Among them was a man dressed in linen with a scribe's inkhorn in his belt. They came in and halted in front of the bronze altar. The glory of the God of Israel rose from above the winged creature where it had been towards the threshold of the temple. He called to them, this is Yahweh now speaking. Yahweh, out of his glory, called to the man dressed in linen with the scribe's inkhorn in his belt. And Yahweh said to him, go all through the city, all through Jerusalem, and mark a cross. Now, this is the New Jerusalem Bible. It's a Catholic Bible, and other translations don't say cross. I think the original Hebrew says ta. The last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, although I've seen it claimed that the early Hebrew Tau or Taw was written as a cross. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But let's say mark a Taw on the foreheads of all who grieve and lament over all the loathsome practices in it. I heard him say to the others, follow him through the city and strike. Not one glance of pity, show no mercy. Old man, young man, girls, children, women, kill and exterminate them all, but do not touch anyone with the taw on his forehead. Same idea, you see, of sealing for purposes of protection from divine vengeance. The annotator and commentator for the Anchor Bible of Revelation, J.M. Ford, has an interesting speculation that I wanted to pass on concerning the nature of this seal. She says, it might be possible to connect the taw of salvation or preservation with the judicial proceedings involving the Urim and Thummim, the objects, probably sacred lots, by which the priest gave an oracular decision in the name of Yahweh. These were set into the breastplate of the high priest, but they were originally small stones of the same size or shape, but with different marks on them, such as Aleph and Taw, respectively, the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. In judicial proceedings, the decision Aleph would mean guilty, and Taw would mean innocent, to be blameless. And if the author of Revelation is influenced by this knowledge, the mark for the beast worshippers then would be Aleph. That we come up to that mark later on in the text. That's an interesting speculation, because if it has any validity, it would apply a developmental standard to those marked. If they're all the way through the psychological alphabet, then they get marked out as special. Another amplification of this image of being sealed is a kind of ambiguous and mysterious one, and it's the mark that Cain received when he went out to the world. He was banished, but then he remonstrated with Yahweh that whoever met him would kill him, and Yahweh said, "Very well, I'll mark you with a seal, so that if anyone were to kill you, he would get sevenfold vengeance." There's sevenfold again, you see. So that the mark of Cain then became a protection for him, just as it is a protection in Revelation. I'm not going to say any more about it other than to indicate how profoundly ambiguous these images are if you dig deeply enough into them. They've got dimensions of meaning that open up ambiguities that aren't easily resolved. Another aspect of the seal is that it separates out the 144,000 from the great multitude that is described immediately following. This could be understood as a separation between the elect and the laity. In all religious traditions, there is a distinction made between what's esoteric knowledge and what's exoteric knowledge for those with different levels of development. And that seems to be alluded to in the distinction made between these 144,000, which is the number 12 magnified, you see. 144,000. That's just the archetype of 12 underscored. The image of being marked comes up in dreams, and it's almost always quite significant. And I usually see it as an indication of vocation, of being called for the individuation process. You know, not very many people are called. It's only 144,000 who would use that analogy. But when one gets clear dreams of being marked or called out, that it suggests that anyway. Our next item is from chapter 7, starting with verse 9. Well, I've already referred to that great multitude, so I'll go on a little bit. Going on in verse 13, one of the elders then spoke and asked me, "Do you know who these people are, dressed in white robes, and where they have come from?" I answered him, "You can tell me, my lord." Then he said, "These are the people who have been through the great persecution, and because they have washed their bloods white again in the blood of the Lamb, they now stand in front of God's throne and serve him day and night in his sanctuary." Now, what a striking image. Robes being washed white in the blood of the Lamb. That we have to pay some kind of attention to that image. See, first of all, it's baptism imagery. After early Christian baptism, the neophyte was dressed in a white robe. So it pertains to the whole symbolism of salutio, but of a kind of peculiar kind. And when you examine this imagery in any depth, it becomes rather complex. This is a baptism in blood that's being referred to. Now, I've written a whole chapter on the symbolism of the blood of Christ. You'll find an ego and archetype. But there are a couple of significant biblical references. One is from Genesis 49, verse 10. "The scepter shall not pass from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute be brought him, and the peoples render him obedience. He tethers his donkey to the vine, to its stock the foal of his she-donkey. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of the grape." Now, that's generally agreed to be a messianic text to refer to the coming Messiah. And it's a reference to robes washed in the blood of the grape. That's so that it's not the exact image, but it's getting quote. There's another messianic text in Isaiah 63. "Who is this coming from Edom, from Basra, in crimson garments, so magnificently dressed, marching so full of strength? Why are your garments red, your clothes like someone treading the wine press? I have trodden the winepress alone of my people, not one was with me, so I trod them down in my anger. I trampled on them in my wrath. Their blood squirted over my garments, and all my clothes are stained. For I have decided on a day of vengeance. My year of retribution has come. I was appalled but could find no supporter. Then my own arm came to my rescue, and my own fury supported me. I crushed the peoples in my anger. I shattered them in my fury and sent their blood streaming to the ground." That's a text generally connected to the vengeance of the coming Messiah. You see, according to these texts, which are really the only ones that use this exact imagery as in Revelation, washing one's robe in the blood of the Lamb would mean to join in the slaughter of one's enemies. That's what I mean by the ambiguity of this imagery. That's one of its meanings. If you look below the surface, that's not the surface meaning. Surface meaning is martyrdom, in which somebody else wreaked his vengeance on them. But the imagery itself and the associative textual connections indicates that's one of its latent meanings. So that J.M. Ford, whom I mentioned earlier, suggests that the great multitude entered into battle alongside of Christ as the warrior lamb or Messiah, and thus washed their robes in the blood of their enemies. You see, now the more usual meaning is martyrdom, and according to that understanding, then these individuals who have washed their robes white in the blood of the Lamb have shared the sacrificial death of Christ by enduring martyrdom for his name, and thereby experienced a baptism with the blood generated by the archetypal drama that their martyrdom lived out. You see, if one is just speaking personally, if one dies a martyr's death, his robes are washed in his own blood. But if it's stated that his robes are washed in the blood of the Lamb or in the blood of Christ, that means that the salutio, the baptism that takes place, is an archetypal drama, and the blood derives from the archetype. It derives from the self, and that indeed, I think, is the basic idea, because such individuals, the martyrs, did live out the fate of the archetype. This is the idea behind Pascal's remark that I came across. The Christ's agony will continue until the end of the world because it's reliving itself all the time. It's the same idea that one found in certain Gnostic notions, what's called the passible Christ. The idea is that Christ is continually undergoing his sacrificial death in all of nature. He hangs on every tree, and that drama is living itself out everywhere, always. Well, that's a fairly accurate picture, as a matter of fact. It is something like that. Psychologically speaking, I think this imagery all refers to the fact that suffering, when experienced consciously as part of the archetypal drama of the transformation of the Godhead, is redemptive. That all suffering that is conscious of that context is redemptive, because it's a participation in the self-sacrifice of the God image, whereby the latter is undergoing transformation by virtue of the fact that there is a conscious participation of an ego in the event that knows what's going on. suffering itself has no value at all unless it's accompanied by the level of consciousness I'm referring to. It has no psychological value, I mean. It may have other values, it may have political value, but psychologically speaking, it has redemptive value only when it's accompanied by consciousness of the archetypal context at that level. That's what I get out of Answer to Job. Nothing original about this, needless to say. This is a straight Jungian doctrine. Well, I'm going to stop with that. I'm gathering questions here and there, and those who have submitted them, be patient, all in due time when the role is completed. So I'll see you next week.